Yeah, everyone, we're just going to give a little bit of time here for folks to come in from the waiting room, make sure that we have everyone joining us. All right, let's see. We have 20 folks. I know we have a couple classes joining us today that look like they're here. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning for our Making Sociology work panel. My name is David Everson. If you don't know me, I teach here in the sociology program. Really happy to moderate this important discussion today, where we have some alumni who graduated from our program, giving us some insight into what they've been up to since they graduated, and talk to us about the resources they might have mobilized while they were at USM, and all those things about sort of post-USM life. So what I want to do is we have some folks, again, as I mentioned, a couple classes joining us, and folks tuning in from near and afar. So I just want to start by asking our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about when they graduated from USM and what they've been up to since that time. Anyone want to volunteer to start?
I can start.
Thanks, Paige.
So I graduated in 2014, and I am presently working at the sociology department as an administrative specialist. I'm also going to grad school. I'm in the clinical mental health program, the counseling program. I'm about a semester in. Yeah.
Thanks, Paige. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Thanks,
Yeah, I'm Asher. I use they, them pronouns, and I graduated. I just figured this out while we were waiting for y'all to hop on from USM in 2016, I believe, with a double major in psychology and sociology, with a nice bunch of women and gender studies classes as well. And since then, I worked in wilderness therapy for a year. And then I worked at the Maine Center for Disease Control and HIV prevention for a little bit. And now I work supervising a youth peer support statewide community.
Thanks, Asher. Bilal or Mark, anyone want to go next?
I guess I'll go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Bilal Fully. He and his pronouns. I wish I could see all your beautiful faces this morning. So yeah, I graduated USM literally last year. I'm currently doing grad school work right now at the Multi School of Public Service, specifically with the Policy Planning and Management program. Currently a part-time student right now, and this is my second semester in. So good to see everyone.
Thanks, Bilal. Mark, I'll have you go last here.
Sounds good. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Mark Noyes. I graduated from USM's sociology program in 2013. In 2016, I got my master's degree in public health from the University of New England down in Biddeford. When I graduated from USM, I got a job at a small research company here in Portland, Maine called Market Decisions Research, where I've been working ever since. Since that time, I joined the company as a research assistant, and I did a lot of work doing the grunt work and day-to-day stuff of quantitative research. Now my title is research director, and I spend most of my days designing quantitative and qualitative research studies for state and government agencies and helping them learn about the things that they want to do, largely in the public health and social services spaces. If you ever see a statistic published by the state of Maine, somebody like me worked to figure that out.
Thanks, Mark. So a nice variety of pathways here that folks have journeyed down after their time here at USM, and some, of course, still here at USM doing school and working. So I'm wondering if the panelists could tell us a little bit about their process for finding either work or graduate school or both, while they were here at USM. What were some of the biggest factors that you were weighing when thinking about your next steps after graduation? And I'll open that to all panelists, so you can use a little raise hand feature or jump in, whatever you like.
Well, I'm happy to go first. My primary concern upon leaving USM was that I was so sick of being broke. Oh my God. Did I not want to be broke anymore? So I started looking around for something that I could do that felt like it had a career to it. I knew from my time at USM that I loved being involved in research, learning more, finding new things, and thinking about problems in new ways. So I really focused my career hunt on something where I could apply some of those skills and some of those things, and hopefully not spend the rest of my 20s completely impoverished, which was a huge priority for me at the time. And I was very fortunate to find something right in Portland, Maine, and be able to develop a long career there. So there was a lot of options available to me, but really fewer that had the level of rigor and sort of academics that I wanted, which made things a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I would say that while I was in school, my focus was mostly on working with my peers, working with my professors, and making sure that I did that well, so that when I graduated, I had some good letters of recommendation. I definitely had the skills that I needed in order to move into the sort of field and career that I wanted, and hopefully finding myself well prepared to do that, rather than while I was at school focusing on the next thing. The next thing came once I was done with school.
Yeah, and Mark, that's excellent, and I'm sure folks would be interested to know, this current job that you have, how was that? Did you find that through word of mouth? Did you find that through particular job apps? I mean, I'm sure it's different than when I graduated college, when I was looking through newspapers to find job openings. I'm sure that's changed a bit. But in terms of how you went about finding this particular job, which sounds like it's a great fit for you and for your background in sociology, could you give us a little bit more background on that?
Yeah, so actually I found this job through an online job board, and then began asking around and discovered that several people that I knew had worked for this company. The company that I work at now actually operates its own data collection center, making telephone calls, which I am positive that everybody on this call has ignored at one point or another in their lives. Thank you very much. You're making my life very difficult. But I did find that several people I knew had worked there and were able to tell me a little bit about the company and its culture, which was fortunate. Then I did a little bit of digging on my own. I found some of the reports and some of the materials that they had produced, because we work for government agencies. Almost everything we do is publicly available. And so I was able to dig up some of that and discover that they were a firm that really did a lot of rigorous work trying to achieve academic and social science standards whenever possible, which is actually something of a rarity in public and private sector research companies. A lot of them are much happier to go about things unscientifically and apply a veneer of research cred rather than doing the real thing. But so I did a little research on my own, discovered that they were the sort of firm that I wanted to work for, and was very fortunate they had a position that was ready for me to move into. Had they not, I probably would have gotten a job starting as a telephone interviewer there and tried to move up from there. But fortunately, I found something that was a little bit more immediate to my goals at the time.
That's great. Thanks for that, Mark. I see Jamie just joined us. Welcome, Jamie. I'm wondering.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could just briefly introduce yourself to the panel and to the audience, and tell us when you graduated from USM and what you've been up to since then.
Sure. My name is Jamie Myers McPhail. I use they, them pronouns. I graduated in 2007. It wasn't a straight shot through college. I was a non-traditional student, although I felt at home and in good company at USM. But since then, I have done a lot of things. I did an AmeriCorps job for a couple of years, and I sort of was looking for, I guess a way to make a difference and make change in the world, but I had no idea actually what that looked like. I had a lot of questions, which is sort of what brought me to sociology in the first place. And then I had survival and paying bills and sort of looking at the big picture and figuring out, can you do that and make change, or it's not very lucrative to try to overthrow capitalism. So I eventually found my way to a movement. I had moved to New Haven with a partner who got accepted to a Yale PhD program. And I guess I thought that, after coming out of USM, if USM had this amazing of professors and people that were really out there, not only doing scholarly work, but actually on the ground, then Yale must be that on steroids. But it was very disillusioned to find that was not the case. There was not a lot of there might've been interest in studying power and oppression and colonialism, but not in actually doing anything about it. And so my partner ended up getting involved in an effort to form a graduate teacher union. And that kind of opened me up to the world of labor and community organizing, and eventually found my way to a group that I sort of was part of forming, but there was already very much a robust effort in New Haven around labor and community organizing. And so I got involved in that. I was terrified basically of doing any of that work. I thought, well, I'm not ready. When I reach a certain age, I'll be ready. And then I realized, you just gotta sort of put one foot in front of the other and do scary and uncomfortable things in order to get better at them. So I've been organizing for about 10 years now with it's called New Haven Rising and with Labor Union Unite here.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing, Jamie. So prior to Jamie's introduction there, we were talking, I asked the panelists to discuss what their process was for finding work and for finding graduate school or finding, if they ended up in graduate school, for locating that after they graduated from USM. So let's go back to that. And in terms of thinking about that search, thinking about what factors kind of came into that decision, we've heard from Mark and Jamie so far. Obviously, the financial imperative of paying the bills is a big dimension. But other panelists, would you like to share more about your process for finding and navigating your way after USM?
I don't mind jumping in. I actually resonated with a lot of Jamie's story. I also served in AmeriCorps for 2 years, right after graduation. I was looking for something meaningful that would also pay the bills. And as Jamie mentioned, that's difficult to do sometimes. And I would also, I don't know, based on my own personal experience, give a word of caution about AmeriCorps. They pay you literally poverty level wages. I made $5 an hour. And they recruit people who are idealistic. And they kind of hide the fact that you will be paid very, very little until it's almost too late to get out of your contract. So just be wary of that. If you are an idealistic person and you see a job posting with AmeriCorps, just know that you will not make a living wage, and unless you have other resources at your disposal, I wouldn't recommend doing it. And so my path after USM was pretty rocky for several years. I did the 2 years in AmeriCorps. I did random retail jobs. I worked at a bakery. It took me some time to come into myself and figure out what exactly I wanted to do and how I wanted to make a living. One thing that sociology has taught me is that, it has given me a way of looking at the world and analyzing power or thinking about issues. But, and I used to think like, oh, that's not valuable. Like no one will pay me for that. And you might not see that explicitly in a job ad, but I have found that the critical thinking skills I bring to the positions I have occupied has been a really important and valuable contribution to my workplace. I've worked in a handful of nonprofits, and I eventually came into recognizing that I want to work in mental health. But I think my background in sociology, even though at first it wasn't evident how that was impacting my career and helping me, now that I'm a little while out and I'm interacting with other people who don't have the same critical thinking skills, I can see that, like, even if I wasn't set up for a very clear career trajectory, this foundation is really essential to anyone who wants to be an engaged citizen and a productive member of society. So I just want to say that if you don't have a clear path set for you after you graduate, it's okay. Like I messed around for a really long time and I felt very fortunate to get in here at USM as an employee. And that's actually one reason grad school is an option for me. I couldn't handle it financially without getting in here. So one thing to consider is if you'd really like to go to grad school, but it doesn't seem financially viable to you, is that there are a lot of jobs that will pay for you to go to graduate school. USM, for instance, has a tuition waiver for employees. And then there are other positions too. I used to work in hospice and they would pay for you to get a graduate degree in social work because they needed social workers on staff. So if grad school doesn't feel possible to you financially, keep in mind that there are employers who will bankroll your graduate tuition.
Thanks, Paige. Thanks for all that insight and for that cautionary note on AmeriCorps. Where did you do your AmeriCorps service at?
I volunteered at Kennebec Valley Community Action Program in Waterville. And I guess another thing to consider is if you do want to do AmeriCorps and you feel like you could be reasonably supported, consider the location too. I worked in a very small conservative town and I'm queer, so that was really difficult for me. I had other colleagues in my cohort who were working here in Portland and they had a much better experience, partly because of the culture here, but also there's more resources easily available. So that's something to consider.
Thanks, Paige. Asher or Bilal, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your process of how you ended up what you're doing now?
Yeah, I guess I'll go. I guess it'll help, excuse me, to give a little background about myself. So I guess I was always immersed in community organizing and civic engagement. So that was a big part of me kind of deciding to go to grad school. I think the idea of public service and serving people and the public needs is something that was really drawn to me. So right after graduating for USM, I had a mentor, Dr. Ahmed, who taught at Muskie. Was like more of like, yeah, like this isn't rolling admissions. Like, don't be afraid to kind of apply some of your kind of passions and ideas into the graduate field. And I was a bit hesitant at first, but I was like, in a pandemic, I'm like, might as well just shoot my shot. So decided to do that, but it was more about, I guess, finding my passions and interests around public service and public needs. So in my undergrad work, I worked with PISLE around civic engagement, but specifically with student-centered learning. So kind of literally understanding a lot of social issues around student voice, racial equity and curriculum per se. So kind of moving that in conjunction with sociology, I was really passionate about policy. So really thinking about Muskie and kind of thinking about being a policy analyst, doing research and stuff like that. So I was really interested in that realm per se, and Muskie was really a good fit for me because being able to get the groundwork with community services and community needs per se, but then also being able to develop public policy was something that I was really interested in. So through mentorship and I guess through my own desires, that's kind of how I was drawn into Muskie as well. And I think one thing to like what Paige was mentioning was like to trust the process. I think what's so beautiful about sociology is that it's so interdisciplinary. You're getting the political, the economic, the social. So I think whatever track that you pick after undergrad per se, I think it's beautiful to know that you have a lot of options after. And of course, mentorship as well. I think professors are great sources of mentorship to call on, and also community members as well, if you have that as well. So always reach out and always feel free to. That's kind of how I was, where it's more like mentorship and kind of professors' advices was kind of drawing me to Muskie as well. So, and it was lucky to kind of like stay at home as well and pursue grad school as well. That's such an under radar thing. A lot of ideas is like a lot of people kind of get fixated on the idea of going to grad school outside of school, but outside of the state. But to kind of do it here is something that's meaningful and passionate and about. So yeah, love it.
Thanks, Bilal. Bilal was in my introduction to sociology course, so it's been extremely rewarding to watch his growth over these last few years. Asher, would you mind telling us a little bit about your process or finding your way after graduation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I'm still finding my way after graduation. So I was like someone who was really in love with my college experience at USM. Like I had wonderful professors. I loved the way that my brain was expanding and like being able to, read new things, study theory, study research. And like upon graduation approaching, I was like, what am I going to do? Like, it was like very scary. I like wasn't excited or relieved. And I decided I needed to just like take a year of doing a job where I was going to like do something enjoyable and fun and like backpacking in the woods with like young people all day. And so I did that, but I was scared that I wouldn't be able to jump back into a field that like really highlighted my passion for sociology, which turned out to not be true. Like after a year of taking this job in wilderness therapy, which did use my sociology skills actually, I was able to get a job in HIV prevention, where I used my research skills and used my like critical analysis skills. And it was actually a job with the main CDC, but it was through USM, who they contract with. And turned out I thought this was like my dream job. I thought it was going to like highlight all of the things that I was passionate about and I cared about. And state government wasn't everything I thought it would be. And so, I'm in a different job now. I'm like supervising youth who like use their lived experience with mental health struggles to like support other youth. And it's a really lovely job. I definitely think about power a lot. I think about hierarchy and how to incorporate horizontalism into my work as a supervisor, how to share power. We have a youth advisory board who we try to like direct and lead the program. But yeah, this is a lot of information. I think all that to say is it's messy. It's a super messy time to graduate right now, like not as like a fear factor thing, but it has been for a long time. And it's okay to like have to piecemeal stuff and like, make it up as you go.
Thanks, Asher, and thanks everyone for those insights. I want to ask the panelists now about some of the resources they might have utilized here at USM while they were in school, in undergraduate, and also, in addition to that, if there are any resources or ways they think that USM could perhaps better prepare students for life after graduation. I also want to note that we have Peter Hoffman here, has been nice enough to join us from the Career and Employment Hub. I was hoping we could get Peter to talk to us and see us on the screen, but I don't think we have the technology set up, so apologies for that, Peter. But perhaps if you want to put in the chat any responses to what the panelists are saying here, or any other information you think would help current students for navigating some of these career resources at USM. Any panelists want to go first?
I guess I'll go. I kind of hinted at that because I used a lot of the career and services hub throughout my graduate work and kind of throughout that process with my essay, my cover letter, my resume. They really helped me a lot to kind of build that form of language through paper per se and being to advocate myself through language. And I thought that was really valuable and helpful, especially after USM. I think one thing that USM does a really good job of is like always supporting you even after you graduate as well. So having those resources was so helpful for me. And also mentorship. I know I mentioned it a bit. I think that was really helpful for me, having a lot of people like professors, even students as well, community people who kind of just like lend a helping hand to kind of really kind of share their voices and their lived experiences, either in education, just their life in general, which has helped me a lot. So yeah, using those resources, and specifically at USM, the career and service hub, like I'd recommend like every student throughout each 4 years, like each year definitely build up those skills and those critical thinking skills. And through language, I think language and framing language on paper is so important throughout after you complete USM as well. So using that has been really helpful.
Thanks, Bilal. Who else would like to share on any resources they might have utilized at USM or resources they wish USM would provide?
Well, I'll echo what Bilal said and about mentorship. When I was preparing to leave USM, I had a lot of conversations with some of the professors that I've worked with, both in the sociology department and outside of it. You will find, if you have a conversation with your professors, that they know you much better than you think they do. You have been handing things to them to read for 4 years or more. They have a pretty good idea of who you are and how you think and the way that you view the world and some of your strengths, some of your weaknesses, and are likely able to have a pretty meaningful conversation with you, even if you don't know where you want that conversation to go. I would suggest getting a little bit of time on them. That worked well for me and helped me think about where I wanted to go, what I wanted to end up doing. Even though I think that I came into those conversations with more of a sense of panic than any sort of plan that I could ask for advice on.
Thanks, Mark. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I really resonated with what you said, Mark, and I definitely, if it wasn't for my professors, in particular Wendy Chapcase, I don't know where I would have been, but there was a lot of support that I received at my time at USM, but also afterward, and I never would have counted on that because I think I had a lot of internal barriers. I didn't know there was a career hub, for example, because I wouldn't have gone out seeking help because I thought, you know, as a working class person, I just have to figure it out and just struggle quietly and not let people know that I need help or anything like that. Was like a dirty word. But, you know, I've received so much support and oftentimes didn't even know it was something I was seeking out. And then, you know, there was someone there for me, and that means a lot. And I think also just having the writing skills and the critical thinking skills. And sometimes that applies to situations that you don't necessarily think you're gonna, you know, need it in, and you realize, oh wow, this is actually, it may not seem like a career focused path, and that certainly wasn't me. I wasn't just career focused, but it applies to so many different situations. And it's a really amazing community. So my advice is to ask for help or to draw on that, or to actually, you know, try to figure things out collectively with other people, because they are there for you and they do want you to succeed and they want you to find your path, and it's not a burden. You know, they're going to have your back.
I do a lot of work with social services and social support agencies, job development agencies, public health agencies. The thing that they're always asking of their consumers is, we have all these resources to help people, but nobody asks about them. Why aren't people asking about them? There's always someone there if you know to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. Anyone else like to share on the type of resources they found valuable while at USM?
Yeah. Oh,
Go ahead,
it's
Ashley.
okay, Paige. Okay, thank you. So I guess want to mention a couple of things. The Recovery Center was a huge part of my college experience, the ROC. So that is just something that you can use to get support while you are at USM if you're struggling with substance use stuff or mental health stuff. but also has been a community that I've still been a part of post-graduation. And then just like echoing what everybody said, like reaching out to your professors for anything that you're interested in. And if there's something that like sparks your interest, just being like, how can I plug into this further? And like, can you support me in doing that? I was lucky to be able to utilize, I think maybe it's still there, like the undergraduate research opportunity program at USM, and do some research with Lydia Savage on gentrification. So like if there's just, if there's something that you're like, oh, I really want to dig into this, like there's so many people at USM who want to support you and who are willing to.
Paige?
I'd like to echo a couple things, especially what Jamie was saying. I felt internally like I wasn't allowed to ask for help. And so I kind of had blinders to the resources that were available to me. But on the other hand, I had faculty members who cared about me as a person and were invested in my intellectual growth. And I'm very grateful to them. And after undergrad, there were a couple times where I played with the idea of grad school. I think I thought about 3 different programs, and each time I see the old emails in my email sometimes, I reached out to Cheryl and Wendy 3 separate times to ask them for references, and they were absolutely accommodating and happy to help me with my winding, messy path. So for me, the faculty were excellent resources. And I think it's something that when you're in sociology, you can take for granted. But I talk to other students and other people who have gone through other programs. And I think the investment that sociology faculty have in their students is really special and rare. And it's something that you should absolutely take advantage of before you graduate and afterward.
Yeah, thanks, Paige. And I'll just reiterate that, of course, we're all here to help. And, this is what I usually tell students who are, weighing doing SBS or doing sociology. And, I tell them that, we're here, we're accessible. I know there's some intimidation. It was the same for me, right? Back when I was going to school and, but if I wouldn't have taken that step to talk to some of my professors, there's no way I'd be here today. So we're here and ready to help you in any way we can. So please seek us out. Some of the panelists have already mentioned this in terms of how sociology and their sociological education has, kind of guided them after they graduated. I was wondering if anyone else wanted to speak a bit more about how the program, the theory, the concepts, what they were learning has sort of improved or enhanced their life since graduating from USM.
Well, I obviously use the specific skills that I learned while getting my sociology degree every day. They're the foundation of my work. That 101 or that I think it was 111, maybe the quant methods course was the foundation. I discovered it. I loved it. I work in SPSS every day. I even am enough of a nerd that I sometimes open up R and work in that, which is
that's impressive.
A different statistical package, and it's just the worst. It's awful. So I use those specific things every day, but Paige mentioned some critical thinking skills, and Asher mentioned some thoughts thinking about power and hierarchy. And I think that those are more broadly applicable to a lot of jobs and a lot of careers than some of the specific things that I happen to use in my career. You will find thinking about problems in a sociological way, thinking about the interconnectedness between systems and individuals and the way that both of those shape each other is something that will serve you well in, as far as I'm concerned, any role, even if that role is just being somebody who is informed and can think critically about the world around them. Those skills, however, I find to be incredibly important to anybody who wants to try to solve problems. And ultimately, that's what most jobs are about, is figuring out what a problem is and figuring out a way to solve it. Learning about that interaction between the systems of the world, the way that power and the way that incentives are distributed and the way that people interact with those systems, the way that they form those systems, is really pretty critical to just understanding the way that the world works, and having that understanding is critical to solving problems in the world. You can't really solve a problem if you misdiagnose the situation. So I think that those general skills, those critical thinking skills, are some of the most valuable things that I take out of it. Learning the research methods and those things are very useful, very good skills to have that you definitely want. Learning the history and theory is very valuable insofar as it serves to really cement and show the power of that critical thinking.
Thanks, Mark. Anyone else like to share?
Yeah, I think you said it well, Mark. I was just gonna add that I think about the sociological imagination a lot, since graduating, and the intersection of the individual with within their context of society, and that is super valuable in many jobs, and can also be a challenge sometimes, but I think just is also so valuable as an individual to be able to know, when I go into a meeting with a group of people, I wonder why I feel insecure in every meeting with these groups of people. And it's oh, okay, maybe it's because of my class or my race or my gender identity, and the way that that's being perceived in this space. And that's incredibly valuable, and just not internalizing the stuff that just keeps coming at you through life, especially if you're someone with marginalized identities. And also I wanted to shout out that unpaid labor has been a very big part of my postgraduate life, and has pulled from sociology in so many ways. And so, it's unfortunate to obviously do a lot of labor that's unpaid, but there's whether it be organizing work or doing lobbying work, there's ways to use your passions after graduation.
Thanks, Asher. Anyone else like to share?
Yeah, I guess I'll go. I think just because sociology is so fresh in my mind, just because of graduating literally last year. But I guess I'll try to do it as quick as possible. But last semester in my governance, democracy, and public policy course, I wrote my final paper on civic associations, and the importance of civic engagement per se, and the ways in which now today in our societies we become more performative in our activism. And that's sociology, right? The ways in which we're kind of more engaging in our systems per se, and thinking about in terms of civic engagements, participation, what does it mean to participate in our society and stuff like that. And the idea of what we have now in terms of organizing per se, a lot of mail-ins, and that kind of loses the on the groundwork stuff. So that's all sociology. And then my organizational leadership class, I dissected, I guess, the snowflake model, right? Understanding the decentralized leadership modes versus the hierarchical modes of centralized leadership. So I compare the Black Lives Matter movement to the civil rights movement, kind of the similarities and differences in terms of leadership, the different people, the different actors per se, and what does it mean to be a leader. It doesn't have to always be at the top. It can be kind of the top-down process, the bottom-up process, sociology 101. But and then now, kind of in my crisis and risk management, I'm looking at the Haiti earthquake per se, and then going through the meaning making, sense making, coordination, kind of the accounting process into that. And that's all sociology, right? Understanding different actors, different players throughout that. And that's policy as well. What policies were implemented in that space of time throughout that crisis and that response. And then lastly, in my sustainable communities course, I'm looking at food systems, right? I'm looking at different social inequities in relation to food systems, and looking at cultivating community, different organizations on the ground that are kind of helping to dismantle food insecurity in Maine per se, and farming as well. I mean, these are all kind of interrelated, right? The political, social, and economic. And I think that's kind of why I kind of wanted to continue grad school, is to kind of analyze these further through a policy realm. And that's kind of, I know that was a bit long per se, but I think it's just beautiful to go into that rabbit hole through grad school work and kind of start writing those papers and stuff, but also conversations. I think even the day-to-day conversations that we have with our friends, our peers, our families, that's sociology as well. So I think sociology is always immersed in us, and I think that's what's so beautiful about it. I know that was long and I'm sorry, but I thought that might be helpful.
No need to apologize. Super insightful, Bilal. Totally appreciate it. Jamie or Paige, would you like to share about how sociology has sort of enhanced your life after graduation?
I can jump in. Yeah, I think I'd like to talk about how sociology is informing my graduate school work. So I'm going into clinical mental health counseling, which is historically and structurally pretty individualistic and hierarchical. And so I am finding myself challenging that and making an effort to bring marginalized perspectives to the center. So literally last night, I hosted an event with my fellow graduate students about feminist counseling and the ways that that specific approach to counseling analyzes power and context. Within mental health, there's a focus on individual pathology, and I'm trying to challenge that and reconsider how I can be an effective therapist to a person within their context. Not just looking at them through the lens of pathology and disease, but also who are they in context? What are the influences in their life that are impacting their experiences of power in the world, and how does that impact their mental health?
Thanks, Paige. Jamie, would you like to say anything?
Sure. I mean, I think sociology literally was how I figured out who I was. I didn't grow up in a rural area. I had never met other queer people. I didn't know that trans people existed. So really understanding who I am, how do the things I'm thinking about relate to me? What is my place in the world? And, how my various identities intersect and how that fits with the other people that I'm organizing. But yeah, realizing as other people are talking that I do use sociology quite a bit even in my work and in my organizing, whether that's, we do a lot of popular education of trying to really shift narratives, and we use data in those, popular education. We try to understand, like, why is the economy the way it was? Was it always this way? Are service industry jobs inherently bad? Were manufacturing jobs inherently good? Why is that? What are those patterns that are happening? And getting people to make a connection between their own lives and their own circumstances and these broader shifts. And just in individual organizing, I mean, most of the work I do is just one-on-one with people, trying to have them understand what their actual self-interest is and not what we're told, and try to have them understand who's actually to blame. Is it your fault, that you're facing these barriers, you're facing this discrimination, or is there something systemic going on? Or is it your neighbor's fault because they have a slightly better situation? Are they taking something away from you? No, there's actually someone that's benefiting. There's a system that's benefiting. And if we're in that mode, we're not able to come together and solve problems and see things as problems that are solvable. So I feel like there's so many layers of sociology. You don't have to be a sociologist to be an organizer. Most of the people I organize with don't have any type of degree, but I think it really has helped me to navigate my way in the world and to help other people, do that as well.
Thanks, Jamie, and thanks everyone for speaking to that. Last question here before we move on to the audience Q&A. I was wondering if you all might have any advice for those sociology majors and minors who are graduating here. Coming up real soon.
I'd like to jump in. I think this is partly the product of my upbringing, but my family couldn't see the value in my degree because they couldn't tell what my career would be after that. So I internalized their thinking that my degree was worthless and I wouldn't be able to get a good job. And that's why I took an AmeriCorps position. It's what I thought I was worth. So I highly recommend not undervaluing yourself. And also don't take the first thing that comes your way. It's very tempting, and circumstantially that might be the only choice you have, and that's valid. But if you have the option to wait for something better, absolutely give yourself time. I think a lot of people have the 6-month time frame in their heads because that's when student loans hit. But it might take longer to find a job, and that's okay. Like if you have the resources to be without a job at that time, wait for the right thing. Don't undersell yourself, and remember that these skills that you have are very valuable. Also, in terms of student loans, absolutely look into income-based repayment plans. After I looked into that, it totally changed my life. In AmeriCorps, I didn't pay a dime on my student loans because I couldn't afford to. And also, if you work in a nonprofit setting for 10 years, they'll forgive your loans after a while. So look into that resource as well. I know student loans are incredibly scary after graduation, but there are resources are available. And definitely reach out to financial aid to get some guidance on how to handle that.
Yeah, thanks, Paige, and thanks for those insights. Public service loan forgiveness is the program that Paige is referring to, so definitely take advantage of that if and when you can after you graduate. Anyone else like to share here on any advice they might have for our graduating seniors?
Yeah, I think one thing that I did that really helped was to mind map, like to physically draw bubbles and visualize where I wanted to go in 3 years and 5 years in my next year. So I literally was, right after graduation, I was literally at the Glickman Library, 2nd floor, using the markers, kind of like just jotting down notes. Because I think at times it can be daunting, right? The idea of completing and kind of leaving USM, and what does that mean for you professionally, academically per se. So to physically be, or visually be able to like see a word on a paper, on a whiteboard per se, can really kind of lessen that stress per se, and that's what really helped me. So yeah, like using that framework of like drawing out what opportunities are out there in the community, what people can I talk to, reaching out to people, because a lot of people and organizations really need sociologists, graduating sociologists, right, from undergrad. So you're an asset to the community, and they need work that you're studying and that you're doing right now. So that's one thing I recommend. And again, like to what Paige and others are saying, like to trust the process. I think at times we kind of lose sight of, we get so fixated on completion that we lose the professional development, we lose the resources that are out there right after undergrad. So kind of trust the process, kind of do those mappings, reach out to people, and yeah, just trust the process and kind of have fun with it, kind of like learn and kind of talk to people. I think that's one thing that I did. And always reach out to your professors as well, or to anyone right now, currently for seniors right now. So that's what I would have to say.
Thanks, Bilal. Anyone else?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to like retract some, not retract, but like add to something that I said earlier around like that it's a hard time to graduate. And like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that make it a hard time to graduate, but there's also a lot of open jobs right now. So, you know, that's a thing. I would also want to give a shout out to Maine Association of Nonprofits. They have a really great job board that like you can just like check out. I think like most of the nonprofits in Maine list their jobs there. It's great if that's like something that you want to look through. And then yeah, I think just like staying connected to your community, you know, like that, I think is one of the most valuable things you can do, like as someone looking for a job or a career, and just as like a person and as a community member. Like if there's things that you're interested in and you aren't currently able to get a position or career in that field, just connect with the people who are doing that work and build relationships with them and see how you can like support the things they're doing.
Thanks, Asher. Mark or Jamie, would you like to share any advice for graduating seniors? Jamie, I'll let you go first, and I'll let Mark have the last word.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us have said we have a kind of winding or messy path, and I think that's totally okay to explore what's out there, because I know I didn't grow up with parents that really worked a lot or worked professional jobs, so I wasn't exposed to a lot. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what my options were. So to be able to trust that process, and we kind of covered like ask for help, reach out again, like talk to people, try to figure out what they're doing, figure out how they got where they are if it's something that you're interested in, but definitely reach out to your professors. And finally, I would say, if you can find a job that has a union, do that. If you can't, form a union in your workplace.
Thanks, Jamie. Mark, we'll let you have the last piece of advice, sir.
Sure, thanks. Thank you, everybody. A couple of pretty specific practical pieces of advice for anybody going out into the job market. If you meet all of the qualifications on a job posting, you are overqualified for that job. You will never have all of the qualifications on most jobs that you are qualified for. You will learn there. There is no downside to applying for a job that you believe you are not qualified for. It takes the time to write an email. There's no reason not to. If you think it's the sort of thing that you would like to do or the sort of organization you would like to join, maybe there's another job there that you're a better fit for, and it's up to them to see that. If you're not qualified and they ignore your resume and application, you've lost the time it takes to write an email. Oh no. My second piece of advice would be to remember when you are interviewing, applying for something, that anxiety, that feeling of energy you have is the energy that you need to get through it and to perform, to be as active and involved as you want it. All energy is fungible. It is not anxiety. It is what you need to perform well.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Mark. And thank you all panelists for all that really, really helpful and practical information. Get a little bit of time here for questions from the audience, which I'm sure there are some. So if folks want to start putting questions into the chat box, I'll monitor that and send it along to the panelists. I also wanted to express our gratitude to Peter Hoffman for putting in all that important information regarding the Career and Employment Hub. If you have specific questions for Peter, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer specific things about the resources again here at USM, excuse me. So please feel free to send along your questions. Wendy has one here. Would the panelists be willing to be contacted by current and graduating students if they have questions sort of after the event today?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yes.
Great, thank you all. So we'll, if we don't have them, we'll send along a document with everyone's email address, so folks can follow up if they'd like to on the information here shared today. What else? Other questions from those who are tuning in? While you're typing those in, I wanted to just augment something that Jamie said and others have said, sort of about reaching out to folks, even if you don't know them. I mean, one thing, you know, when I was in college, I wish my professors would have told me, is just how important social networks are in terms of opening up opportunities for you. And, you know, as we talked about in my class, you know, the most cited sociological piece, Mark Granovetter's Strong and Weak Ties. It's really those sort of weak ties, the folks that you just sort of are, you know, vaguely acquainted with, who can often open up all these new pathways for you. So if you're thinking about a particular organization that you'd like to work for, or if you're thinking about applying to graduate school somewhere, you know, don't be afraid to send an email, just a cold email. Tell the person who you are, tell them what your interests are, and how you'd like to contribute either to the organization or to the graduate program. You know, they may or may not respond, but you know, in some cases they do, and that's an excellent sort of personal connection, as opposed to, you know, just sending in a resume to a job, where we know now that many of these jobs are starting to move to algorithmic based screening processes, which are kicking people out right away without a human even seeing it if, for instance, you've been out of the workforce for more than 6 months, which, as we know with the pandemic, that's been affecting a lot of folks. So reach out to people, and it's a great way to get your name out there and hopefully to open up some new paths for you. Let's see here, and utilize LinkedIn for sure, as Peter's saying. Definitely, there are a lot of folks on there, and connect with people, send folks emails and everything like that. Thanks, Peter. We got a question from Morgan here. She says, thoughts on working in nonprofits. She worked an internship at one, and it seemed like a lot of overworked people, and even expectations of coworkers performing a lot of unpaid labor, a point that Asher made before. So the nonprofit world, would anyone who has experience in it like to speak more about it in terms of the upsides and the downsides to that type of employment?
I can jump in. I think it depends a lot on the organization itself. I've worked at some organizations where, yes, people were absolutely overworked and expected to do unpaid labor. And then I've worked at others where there was reasonable and equitable share of power. So one thing I would suggest is really listening to your intuition during the interviewing process. I look back at some of the interviews I sat through, and there were a lot of red flags that I ignored. So just listen to your intuition about a place. That can't tell you everything. You don't really exactly know what you're getting into until you're doing a job, but your intuition is strong. And yes, I think it depends a lot on the organization you're working with.
Thanks, Paige. Anyone else like to speak on the nonprofit world?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that, who brought this up? I think that's a great question, Morgan. And one that I continue to ask myself. I mean, I've worked for numerous nonprofits, post and pre-graduation. And I don't know if I've yet to find one that doesn't have like an unreasonable expectation of the amount of work that you do that will lead to burnout for most people. And I think that there's a lot tied into oh, well, we're doing good and valuable work, and that's important to you, and you're a person that cares about that. So there's an expectation that you will put aside your own needs, or that you'll do unpaid labor, or that you'll work X, Y, and Z things. And so I think just going back to Jamie's point around trying to work for places that are unionized is really, really key. And if not, trying to do the work to make that happen. And yeah, I mean, I guess, Paige, I'm glad that you've had some positive experiences with nonprofits. So it sounds like there's some out there that don't have those expectations.
Thanks, Asher, and thanks again for sharing that helpful website link of job opportunities with nonprofits. Anyone else want to speak to this question from Morgan about sort of the upsides and downsides of working for a nonprofit? Looks like Jamie is ready.
Yeah, I've worked at a number of nonprofits, and I agree with what both of you have said. There's better and worse ones. And I mean, I feel sort of vexed by the whole concept in some ways. In New Haven, where I live, it has some of the worst inequality and poverty anywhere. And we continue to just throw more nonprofits at the problem instead of actually trying to tackle, for example, 60% of our city is untaxed because Yale is here. Right. And instead of trying to change that dynamic, we just continue to have supposedly poverty fighting organizations, which are really just there to meet very basic needs and barely able to do that, and then are sort of competing over funding. And I find that just troubling, the dynamic as a whole. It's not anything against any of those particular organizations. But I work for a nonprofit. It's a 501c4, which means we can do politics. So it's a little bit different. And we're not sort of out there competing over foundation grants. But yeah, I work 60, 70 hours a week. I work my paid hours, and then I also volunteer. I volunteer on political campaigns. I volunteer, just with other organizations. And I do that not because anyone's telling me I have to do it, but because I know that's what it takes to win in the sort of losing battle we've been to get out from under the history that we have. But I've also worked for nonprofits where I wasn't doing that out of my own volition. I was doing that because I was being asked to, and oftentimes I was being asked to do work that was actually my supervisor's work that she got credit for that I was not paid for. And that was a problem. So I think it does vary a lot, but I think a lot of us are drawn to that because, for-profit world seems terrible to me. I mean, I make a lot more money, but it seems completely counter to my values. And if I come out of sociology, that doesn't seem like the way that I would want to go. But I think there are a lot of different types of organizations. I mean, like Planned Parenthood is a very different than working in the diaper bank is different than working for a union or working for my organization.
Thanks, Jamie. Anyone else on the question of nonprofits? Okay, so Bianca had a great question here about social networking events and if there are any available to undergrads. Peter responded with the Eggs and Issues panel event that the Chamber of Commerce hosts. And if it looks like Peter has graciously offered to give folks tickets to that if you send him an email. So that might be a good opportunity for folks to meet others in our community. Jason White has a question here. When it comes to good paying jobs, would you advise going to graduate school? How important are credentials in making money? Also, how important is quantitative research in grad school and jobs? If you're not great at it, will it be a weakness that limits your success in your post-USM endeavors? So some big things there. Anyone want to try to tackle any of those questions?
I can kind of move through that. When it comes to grad school, I would say it depends on your interest and what you want to focus on. If you do want to be in research and advancing that, usually it's a good idea to get some additional credentials under your belt. However, most of the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis finish their bachelor's degrees, and that is all the credentialing they have. I do work with some people who didn't even go that far in their education. I also work with many people who got their master's, their PhDs, and I work in a field that is particularly heavy in very, very well educated people, for which credentialing is extremely important. And even there are plenty of people who don't have anything beyond a bachelor's degree. So it depends. If you want to be the senior statistician at Q polling, you probably do need a doctorate. However, if you want to go into research or do research even at a university level, there's no reason why you need a quantitative degree and a strong quantitative background. There are plenty of researchers who use more purely qualitative methods. A lot of books get published without a strong foundation in quantitative research. In fact, most people prefer reading about qualitative research to quantitative research when they're looking to learn about a topic. How it is important in credentials in making money, you will find that once you get beyond a bachelor's degree and you look at what the Bureau of Labor Statistics said, they are almost unrelated. Once you achieve a bachelor's degree, your chances of having an above average income is basically the same as it is with a PhD. How important are quantitative research in grad school and jobs? It, again, in my experience, depends on what you want to do. If you want to go into something that is quantitative research heavy or quantitative methods heavy, it's very important. If you don't, then it isn't. What I find to be most important, I work with quantitative methods and quantitative research every single day. It is my primary job is to work with quantitative methods. I'm not great at math. I'm a B- math guy at best. I understand the concepts, how to work with them, when to apply them, what is appropriate and what is an inappropriate use of quantitative tools. And then I know how to work a computer, and the computer will do the math part for me. As long as you have a solid grasp on the meaning, fundamentals, and uses of quantitative research methods, you will be able to apply them with enough facility to do what you need to do, unless what you want to do is go into statistics, which I get the impression from your question is not something that is of great interest to you. But in most positions, being a math person is not necessary to using quantitative research methods correctly and well.
Thanks, Mark, for that thorough answer. And also thanks to Peter for responding to Jason's inquiries as well. Anyone else have any insight on these questions from Jason?
Yeah, I think one thing to kind of summarize is just focus on your passions and desires. I think money will always come eventually. I think of course, like economic incentive is very important, but I think not losing sight of your passions and ideas in relation to sociology after you graduate is something that I would recommend. And then of course, I think, what was it, quantitative reasoning 300 or something? I think that is probably enough for you, Jason. That's something that was enough for me as well. So I think that's all I have to say. And I think you got it, like just stay strong with it and then trust the process and enjoy it.
Thanks, Bilal. I want to get to this question from Grace, which is a really good one. So Grace says, in the sociology and SBS programs, I found some of the subject matter hard to get through emotionally. How are you able to push those feelings aside and push through in order to continue to do this important work? Anyone want to?
I have a lot of thoughts about that. I'm getting a master's degree in feelings, so my advice would be to not push the feelings aside, but to sit with them and feel them, and also have a supportive group of your peers who you can process with. I think that was a really big part of my undergrad experience. Was I had a really strong group of people that I would decompress with. And I think also sitting with those feelings is an important part of unpacking inequality. Like, I think part of the reason inequality is perpetuated is because some people push that away and don't sit with it. And so I think if we spend time sitting with and attending to those feelings, it not only helps us process it intellectually, but it brings it internal. It really brings it to an entirely different level. I remember I took a class on poverty and I came home crying every single day. And so I would advise that you attend to your mental health in any way you can, with support from your peers. Also, the counseling center at USM is a good resource. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Paige. Anyone else want to share any thoughts on this?
Even when you're using quantitative methods, keeping that empathy and that those emotional experiences kind of in mind, as Paige was saying, and working with them is really important, because when you're doing quantitative sociological work, you're describing people's experiences and viewing them through an empathetic lens. Being able to tell those stories is incredibly important and makes the work more meaningful and more useful in the end.
Thanks, Mark. Jamie, it looks like you wanted to jump in here.
Sure. I mean, I will say for me, like I dropped out of college and went back a number of times, and part of the factors were just economic and part of it was depression. And actually this, I think what you're bringing up had something to do with it, because I had all these feelings and thoughts and I didn't know what to do with them. And I went to another school before I came to USM, and I found at USM, I felt a lot more supported, and I found professors that were modeling how to not only think about things in a scholarly way, but to go out and be part of the world and to figure out if I'm really angry about something, like I do need to process that, but sometimes I also need to apply that, because if you don't have an outlet for your emotions and for these things that you're learning about, sometimes it just feels like, okay, we're learning about horrible things, but what do we actually do about it? So to figure out if there is a praxis that you can have, or there are some communities that you can be part of where you're actually dealing with those topics in a real way outside of the classroom as well.
Thanks so much, Jamie. Anyone else want to weigh in here? Any other questions from the audience? Panelists, any concluding thoughts that may have been sparked by what we've talked about today? No worries if not, but if anyone has anything else to say, now is a good time to do so.
just to thank everybody for participating, thank all the panelists, thank all the students for attending and your questions, and best of luck to all of you.
And like,
Yeah,
I
I'd
think,
also say, oh, you go. Sorry, Ashley.
okay, thanks. I think, someone asked earlier, like if any of us would be willing to like be connected with at a later point. We all gave like the thumbs up, but like, I just want to verbally say, like, I think we would all be excited to like connect with anybody. Like we would like want to talk. We'd want to like connect you to the people we know. Like I'd want to like bring you to my job and just like tell you what it's like and stuff. And so, yeah, definitely reach out to any of us.
All right, so a lot of gratitude here coming in on the chat, and I just want to thank again the panelists for taking the time and sharing all of your insights. We're also, of course, incredibly impressed by what you're doing and how you're positively impacting the world. Thanks to everyone in the audience. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for Peter for the resources from the Career and Employment Hub. If you're wrapping up the semester, I wish you peace and good luck here in the next few busy weeks, those in graduate school or those still at the undergraduate level. If you're not, then good luck with your work. And we will be in touch with everyone's contact information so that we, as Asher's saying, can build that community, which we all need more of these days. So thanks to everyone again, and hopefully we'll be seeing you all real soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great to meet you guys.
Good to meet you too.